Welcome to another mini episode of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast, where we deliver, and not necessarily in this order, movie reviews, interviews, and a whole lot of hijinks. I am your humble host, Tom Detloff, and I am joined tonight by two of my co-hosts, Mr. Dave Pace and Joseph Christiana. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Yo, Evil Dead.
Evil Dead, man. Hey, we're back to horror, Joe.
I know. Dude,
just when
we thought it was safe to go back to podcast.
Just like that, the Cutting Room is slowly getting back into horror with Sinister. Now with the Evil Dead on the mini episode. I mean, it's Joe. I'm getting scared, and not because of these movies.
There's no escape. You can't escape the horror.
Well, it's a good thing, Joe, we have Mr. Dave Pace to set us straight on these films, if you know what I'm saying. So
he's a horror expert.
Dave, how you doing, dude?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Looking forward to talking a little Evil Dead tonight.
You know, guys, I literally feel like we just got done recording an episode just an hour ago.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me going crazy. So, Joe, our very first episode ever on The Cutting Room, now known as the Cutting Room Movie Podcast.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, you, Billy Barassa, and I took this great journey, and we decided that we were going to not only cover the first films of two legendary directors, but we were going to discuss their whole careers as well. And right, one of them was Peter Jackson, but the other one happens to be Mr. Sam Raimi. So tonight, everyone, we are going to talk. Well, Dave Pace is going to give you a pre-screened review of the 2013 remake of Evil Dead. But Joe, Evil Dead was really one of the first films that we ever discussed here on the Cutting Room Movie Podcast.
That's right. It was right after Terror Trap, starring Michael Madsen, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Which just wound up becoming a discussion about Tom Sizemore and Michael Madsen.
And Rednecks, I believe.
And Rednecks, yeah, sure. See, right then and there, Joe, we were trying to get away from the horror, you know?
You can't escape the horror. But hey, I think since the demise of the Horror Palace, right? We've been talking about this, Tom. Should we make the announcement?
Of what? Oh,
because all our like episodes 1 through 21 are just not available to the public. So
only you have access to them right now.
That's right. I listen to them nonstop.
You're kind of like it's kind of like in Eddie and the Cruisers, the Lost Tapes.
That's right.
Joe, you have the Lost Eddie and the Cruiser tapes right now.
That's right. The Lost Tapes. I listen to them constantly. Tom, they're on constantly playing the episodes 1 through 21.
Yeah, you're playing them in your car. You're playing them on the headphones at work, Joe. I mean,
I just love that nobody else in the world can hear them.
Joe, how many times have you listened to episode 7?
Yeah, a million times. No, you know what? I think we've been talking about this a lot lately. Is just finally starting to re-release these. So I think this might call for it, right? We're our back to horror. And Evil Dead and Sam Raimi, I guess, is going to come into this. So
I think that's a wonderful idea, Joe. And in the spirit of Evil Dead and in the spirit of Sam Raimi, and just really in the spirit of horror, to coincide with our little mini review of the remake of Evil Dead, we're going to release episode 1 from the Horror Palace, the very first Cutting Room Movie Podcast episode.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All
because
right.
I mean, it should be out there. So we'll let them free and breathe out there.
So with this episode, folks, you also have access to our very first episode of the Cutting Room. Hey guys, let's stop screwing around. Let's put Dave Pace to work. He's going to give you his review of Evil Dead 2013. Dave, let's hear what you got.
Evil Dead is the Prometheus of 2013. Steve Kostanski directed two of my favorite films of last year, Father's Day and Man-Born. His opinion is one which has earned my hard-won respect in a big way. So when he wrote this Facebook status update after we both saw an industry screening of the new Evil Dead, I had to pause and consider his meaning. All I could rationally conclude is that this is entirely true depending on whichever way you felt about Prometheus. If you hated Prometheus and hated Evil Dead, then you agree with this statement. If you loved Prometheus and loved Evil Dead, it was the same deal. If your opinion was it was merely okay, then again, you could agree with this assessment. This of course breaks down like physics does when you drill down deeper into the nuances, but in general, a lot of people could agree with this statement and be coming from very different places. What I'm getting at is that Evil Dead is bound to be polarizing. It has a history, a pedigree that comes attached to it, and along with that, it has its enforcers of the orthodoxy of that history. These people are so unlikely to accept anything new that threatens to change their beloved franchise. Any deviation is heresy. There are also the people who will just hate a remake straight up without needing to test the waters first. They reject it out of hand, no matter how competently done, no matter how masterfully executed. Here's how I felt about Prometheus. It was a beautiful and entertaining film with deep flaws. It was not the abomination so many insist that it is. If it was bad filmmaking, I'd take it any day over another quirky rom-com or dull-witted action schlock like G.I. Joe. It had all the things I was hoping for it to have in order to have the elements of an alien movie, and it mostly executed them well. Oddly enough, this is exactly how I feel about the new Evil Dead. So what am I looking for in order for this movie to satisfy me? Just the elements of an Evil Dead story that I consider essential, which frankly isn't much. A cabin in the woods, a group of friends, a Necronomicon, demonic possession, gore, violence, chainsaws, monster cam running through the woods, rape trees. I think that's the core of it, really.
Yeah, not much, not very much.
No, that's not much.
No, it's a short list.
But it's Anyway, the new Evil Dead delivered all of these things and much, much more. So here's what I loved. The atmosphere. Really gritty, grimy, and menacing. The cabin is spooky and skin-crawling dirty in places. The forest is full of foreboding and vicious intent. While not quite the character it was in the original, it certainly got presence. I love the violence. It's brutal, just brutal. The movie is sadistic and delivers pain and gore that had a room full of professional horror nuts wincing and groaning in shock and awe. I saw it among the Canadian film press, including the editor-in-chief of Fangoria and the editor-in-chief of Rue Morgue. I saw how everyone reacted to the over-the-top brutality of the movie. It was a shocker. Where the original might have put a one-liner or a joke in to break the tension of a scene, the newest incarnation does it with a nail to the face or a meat slicer to the guts. Acts of terrifying violence act as the only real release valves the movie gives us. The effect is tense and crazy as you marvel at how far they are willing to go with it, and how much more punishment our doomed heroes in the movie are able to withstand. I love the practical effects. I can't thank the makers of this film enough for going in this direction. It's so refreshing to see blood that isn't computer generated, and real prosthetics that people on set can see and react to. Everything feels so much more organic and visceral. The impact on the performances and the audience perception of the carnage on screen is so profound, I was staggered by it. I have this vision of these kids like 16 years old sneaking into this thing, and possibly for the first time in their lives, seeing these kinds of top-notch practical effects. What that is going to do to their imaginations is amazing. Their minds are going to be utterly blown, and this may just ignite the practical effects industry again. Mark my words, the Tom Savini of tomorrow is going to cite this film as an inspiration. The tone. This time, it's all business. The cheese is gone. The slapstick element is not even remotely present. To many, these might be the core elements of the Evil Dead experience, fair enough, but I enjoyed a straight take on the concept. Without the goofiness, the movie can really ratchet up the tension and make a truly different Evil Dead experience. The last thing I loved was the pedigree of the director. I love that they found Fede Alvarez on YouTube. This is really just vindication of my notion that the tools and resources available to the indie filmmakers of today to just go out there and do it are building the future of film. A guy with a camera and a YouTube account landed the opportunity to remake one of the most beloved films in the horror canon. That's goddamn amazing. What I didn't like. Wasn't crazy about a lot of the performances when it came to the emotional subject matter of the plot. In fact, the performances I liked best were Jane Levy's portrayal of Mia as a tortured drug addict, and Lou Taylor Pucci as the bespectacled friend whose curious nature makes a fateful meeting with the Necronomicon. I didn't really think anyone else distinguished themselves, but it's kind of like the first movie in that regard. The ending I wasn't crazy about, and I won't spoil it here, except to say that it's the false climax that kind of killed it for me. The actual climax was fucking awesome. And some things that others won't like, but I give it a pass. The plot. Some people just aren't going to forgive that there is a different plot, and the campers aren't vacationing revelers, but they're for a different and more personal purpose. I don't think it detracts from the story, and in fact, I think it creates a very convenient answer for all the cries of, why the fuck aren't they leaving? Or freaking out at this person's psychotic behavior, that are only natural in a setup like this. Unfortunately, the sword cuts both ways. The reason for being there is too perfect an excuse. It ends up looking like such a crafted screenwriter move, and for some, it's just too cute. I think the plot served the purpose well, even if at times it was a transparent cover to legitimize a bunch of things that would otherwise make no damn sense. In my final estimation, Evil Dead is a fine piece of filmmaking. It's not perfect, it didn't change my life, but then again, I'm not 16 or 17 and just discovering this world. Maybe, if I was, this film would impact me the way its original incarnation did in my day. I can simply say it was a great movie experience, and I left having a good time. I wish I could say the same for more horror films these days, and for that, Evil Dead gets my vote. So in the end, Steve was right. Evil Dead is the Prometheus of 2013. I've figured out how I reconcile this statement. So will you when you see the movie this Friday.
So, Dave,
No, it was good. It was good. Yeah, I mean, I had a really good time, and I think, you know, here's what was telling to me, because I saw it among people who are horror movie fucking fanatics. You know, people are crazy about this stuff.
Right.
And I was watching them like wince and like hearing the whole crowd go, ooh, you know, when stuff would happen. And then when you walk out after everybody's talking about it, they go, yeah, it was okay. And I kind of thought, you know what? I saw you in there. I heard you in there. You had a great time. You know, and I think, I don't know, I think the minute you start like really intellectualizing this movie and thinking about it in context with the original and all that stuff is where you just kind of lose your way.
Well, you have to, you know, you have no other choice but to think about the original, Dave. Watching.
I know, but I just think I had a great time. I saw it. I had a great time. There was some great stuff on the screen. You know, it was a crazy, wild experience, and one that still very much felt like an Evil Dead movie to me. It had all the things I wanted to see in an Evil Dead movie.
Okay, well, let's get down to brass tacks, because what it sounds like to me is the camp is out. No camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
No camp.
The schlock is out. The schlock and camp are out. So instead of a guy, Joe, and we talked about this when we did the Evil Dead movie. So instead of a guy who was like obviously in love with like the Three Stooges who wound up making a horror movie, this movie is its intention is to scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I remember, the first Evil Dead wasn't as campy as the Evil Dead 2, which was the.
But it's there, Joe. It's obvious.
Right.
It's obvious.
There's a lot. It is lighter. You know, you could tell he's having fun with the effects. It's like a haunted house. The original, anyways, sort of like a haunted house fun kind of
Mhm.
thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could say between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, the Sam Raimi versions, is just that Evil Dead is just not as campy as Evil Dead 2. That's it.
Or as I mean, I feel like he was more confident with his game, you know,
Sure.
with exactly what he wanted to do because he had a little bit more time to prepare or whatever.
Fair
So
enough.
no Bruce Campbell. There's no Bruce Campbell standouts, is what you said in your review as well, Dave. So the cast there were no shining stars of the
You
cast,
didn't
Well,
see
or
any stars.
like I said, Levy was good.
Mhm.
Poochie was good. They weren't, but again, beyond Jane Levy, who I think did a spectacular job. Everybody else was just kind of there and did their jobs, right? They did what they were supposed to do.
And practical effects. That's actually the most surprising thing that I heard you say there
Yeah,
was how much practical effects, and
all
that's an
100%.
interesting decision. So I mean that's obviously a very conscious decision to do that, and I think
Absolutely.
that's partly I would imagine you would say that it's in respect and for the original. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw the movie with the guy who actually did the visual effects in the film, Patrick Baxter, and he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing, and the stuff he does in this movie, um, the poor people who maybe are younger than us and have never really seen practical
Hmm.
effects it's gonna blow minds. Like it really
Yeah.
is. Like it really is because it looks so good, and it looks things just look meaner. You know what I mean? It's gnarlier. It's got a real presence. And,
It's messy.
yeah,
Like it has the messiness of an actual event in real life, you know?
absolutely. And I think that so much of some of the shit was hard to do, guaranteed, very difficult. Long, difficult days on set trying to get something to work. Long
Mhm.
times trying to figure out, continuity and shit like that. And I guarantee you, a lot of the frustration and the craziness of doing these effects deeply impacted the performances. I mean, when you can see something as an actor, I'm sure when you can see something there right in front of you, you can see somebody, with a fucking nail in their head or something.
Now,
You,
is it distracting? Like like you're paying attention, like you're over aware of it being a practical effect. Do you think a typical audience is gonna be are they being glaringly obvious, like showboating it out there that
no,
it's
no, but there's a lot. Like there's a lot.
Well,
Uh,
that's what Raimi did, right, Joe?
Well, I was gonna say that is one of the sensations or one of the experiences I had with the original was actually marveling at what happened at the end with that zombie thing or whatever it was. Uh, how what they did with that, what he did with that. Now painstaking that animation was with the what was it? I'm sort of. It's been a while since I've
Yeah,
seen it, but like
I know
it,
what you're talking about. I
yeah,
remember.
when she disintegrates or
Yeah.
whatever, and green, I think it's green stuff is going
yeah.
everywhere and all
Right.
that shit, right? So is it like to that extent, or it's slicker, or
It's
it's what?
definitely slicker. Like it's these are practical effects, but these are practical effects of 2013, right?
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So these are people who are really at the top of their game and who really know how to do this stuff and make it look awesome. And they do. And just in every scene where they're deploying these effects, you're just like, God damn, it looks amazing. And
Wow.
you miss it. You miss like seeing real blood, seeing stuff that's not CGI blood
Right.
even was just so refreshing. And I
Right.
believe they used I forget what the final tally was, but it was like tens of thousands of gallons of blood.
Right. So like
I'm
what
not even
yeah.
kidding. It's like 60,000 or something.
So something must have happened at the end where there's some kind of flood or
Hell
something
yeah.
like that, right?
So like
Yeah,
in the early '80s, Raimi and Campbell are like basically trying to up the game of say like a Ray Harryhausen, and now what these guys seem to be doing is trying to up the game of like a they're trying to up the game of a Tom Savini.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I don't know if they're trying to like like get in his face or anything like that, but they're certainly trying to. I mean, I remember a time, and this is back when I read Fangoria when I was a kid. Savini was a rock star, you know, and everybody like special effects guys. They made movies about special effects guys, you know, and it was like these were like these rock star figures who could create magic on the screen.
Right. Yeah, it was
And
Savini, and even bigger was Rick Baker.
absolutely. And what you end up with in today is that it's not really easy to glorify a dude who sits at a Mac.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it's a team of people. That's
Yeah,
what it
exactly.
is.
Like you can't really go and say, yeah, this guy's got amazing skills in Maya 3D.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's hard to get people into that.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. When I saw these trailers, these remakes and stuff, I'm always just like, yeah, whatever. Who cares? If I see it, I see it. If I don't, I don't. I don't really care. But just the fact that these are practical effects is making me want to see this movie. Like that's like it's almost the reason that I want to go and see it. Actually, like I feel like I want to go and watch it because of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a great reason to go see it. I think even if you think the rest of it is shit. And people I've talked to who think it's shit, they agree the effects are incredible.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the deal with why do they think it's shit?
Yeah, what the consensus, the overall consensus, Dave, is that it's shit?
I think the overall consensus is that it's pretty good. It's pretty decent, but it's polarizing from what I understand, from what I'm seeing anyway.
I talked to a few guys who were there that night with me, and most of them enjoyed it, but some of them were like, yeah, it really wasn't good, and they didn't like it. They didn't, they felt that it was almost like a Rob Zombie Halloween kind of situation where, somebody said it was like they gave Michael Myers a backstory, and it wasn't necessary. And
it's puritanical bullshit, basically.
I agree that giving Michael Myers a backstory was terrible, and that was a terrible idea. But nothing really happens like that in Evil Dead because there's no real character in Evil Dead that you can fuck up, right? Like the elements of Evil Dead are not a character.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, well, I mean, is there a story? Is there a storyline?
There's a storyline, and I wanted to avoid sort of giving away too much in the review portion.
Well, because when we did our first episode, I remember at the end of the show we were talking about what Peter Jackson was doing next and what Sam Raimi was doing next, and then we wound up discussing the fact that there was an Evil Dead movie remake and out there. And I remember Billy mentioning the fact that they were going to the cabin because one of the characters had a drug problem and it was like a detox thing.
That's exactly what it is.
So they wound up sticking, because this was like over a year ago when we did that show. So they wound up sticking with that story.
Absolutely, and that's when I mentioned in my review that the story really serves as a convenient way to answer some questions. It's great. It's genius to actually have it as a drug rehab. We're going to go to this really secluded cabin and let you kick your heroin habit. And what that allows Alvarez to do is answer a whole shitload of questions about, well, why didn't they just pack up and leave? Well, they're not going to pack up and leave because they want her to stay there and detox. Why aren't they noticing how crazy she's acting? Well, she's acting crazy because she's detoxing from heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And so it buys them time so that the characters are in way the hell over their head before they even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything goes to shit. So it's the complaints about it was that why are we turning Evil Dead into a drug allegory and all that shit. And I think honestly it wasn't like let's make Evil Dead into a drug story. It was we can just like close a bunch of plot loopholes by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a bit screenwriterish. Like that's my complaint about it is it's too neat. It's too screenwriterish.
Well, one of my things about sequels like this, and you know what, I just experienced it last night watching Skyfall, the Bond movie.
Yeah.
Like almost the
Yeah.
whole, like it's a fun movie, whatever. But you get the sense that like they're so preoccupied with engaging with the cliches, like they spend. It's almost like the shaken not stirred thing,
Yeah.
like you're just waiting for them to hit upon that because they have to hit upon it in some manner, and then it's like, oh, how will they, put an angle on shaken not
Ah.
stirred? Is he actually gonna say it, and or how is he gonna get out of the predicament, and when is the you know what I mean? So it's like you have to hit these notes and everything, and it just gets sometimes it just
Well,
makes me.
and you know what? To its credit, um, a lot of the sort of throwbacks to the original Evil Dead in this version are I wouldn't say subtle because they're not, but
Mm,
they can be. In the beginning of the film when they first arrive at the cabin, Ash's car is like rotting away. In the
mm,
parking lot. You know what I mean? Like
Oh.
it's out behind the cabin, sort of abandoned and rotting away.
uh-huh.
Uh,
Okay, I gotcha.
and
But they do stuff like the tree rape, and the
which
monster.
they do,
Yeah.
Right.
they
Well,
do,
if it works, you stick to it, right?
and the tree rape is fucked up in this one. It is like it's not like I remember the first one being like weird and kind of funny almost.
Like it didn't seem it was uncomfortable almost in the
Yeah, it
first
was
one.
like, eh. This was uncomfortable as well, but it was uncomfortable because it's like, oh my god, that's horrible. You,
Like they just went for it.
like,
You know what's
it,
funny though is that like in contrast, see, it's an uncomfortable moment in the original because they were all uncomfortable doing it, and I think that Raimi was quoted as saying at one point that was he sort of regretted doing that, and
yeah,
I'm almost certain that the actress, I've drawn a blank on her name right now, but she was certainly didn't regretted doing that.
it's a really uh, it's a really kind of ugly moment in this one as well. It's got kind of an element of like hentai, like tentacle rape.
Hmm.
It's pretty fucked up. Like it was definitely one of the moments where everybody was going, "Holy shit!"
Jeez.
in the theater. Like it was intense, and that's probably actually the best way to describe the whole movie. Is it is just intense. Like it starts off with a real dramatic intensity about why they're there, and
Right.
then it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier until it's just. And I do mention that it does go off the rails at one point, in my opinion, but it gets back on.
Cool.
Wow.
I got Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Joe, you said that you stay away from these remakes, right? You kind of
I just I don't yeah, as in general principle, on the principle of it is that I think it's cowardly business
of
practice,
course,
right?
and it
And
disturbs
then
me. Yeah, I know.
it sucks the art out of it,
It disturbs
of
me.
making a
Yeah, it
film.
disturbs me that they do it. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Joe. But for some reason, I I really do. I check in with almost all of them. I it's a
I, I don't check in with all of them, but that said, the ones that I do check
And
in,
I'm not just talking horror. I'm talking,
yeah, yeah, no, I can always have fun. I always try to get into the spirit of a film. So it's like in theory, I despise the practice, but in practice, I actually generally have fun. I try to get into the spirit of whatever picture I'm watching and see what the filmmaker was trying to do. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, the nice thing about this is a remake, and I think what redeems it is ultimately that it is a different approach. This is not a Gus Van Sant Psycho.
Well, man, that Gus Van Sant Psycho, I actually have respect for
I
that.
do too.
in another way, like, and actually in a greater way, in a sense, because the very act of him making that film is a statement on the act of making a sequel. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I mean the painstaking craziness that he went through to recreate the
Right.
film is incredible. I would say
Right.
the same thing about Haneke's U.S. Funny Games. He
Right.
went to obscene lengths to make that movie identical.
Yeah, because and in it it makes a statement about how he feels had the perversity of making a remake of a film. You know.
Absolutely.
Right.
Uh,
So I mean,
Like it wasn't enough what he did with his original film.
Yeah, I mean, just that's him just saying the gall of you people
Yeah.
who can't watch my film as I originally make it. I mean, I'm gonna reflect it back to you and show you how fucking ridiculous. I mean, it's just for his own peace of mind. I would imagine something like that. You
Yeah,
know?
well, I mean, he has come out and basically said that he did it because he knew that his target audience for this film was never going to see it unless he made it in English and made it with some actors that people were going to recognize.
Right. Well, I will say that the actors who did it, and I do like the Michael Pitt was just
He's
amazing.
amazing. He's so good.
Yeah, he's one of my personal favorites, Pitt.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, great film, a Bertolucci film, Tom. I've always been meaning to recommend to you. The Dreamers was.
I've watched some of the. You know, it's so funny because I watch almost everything with Michael Pitt. Uh, I watched some scenes from that was just like a hippie movie almost, isn't it?
Yes, it was a hippie movie. As a matter of
No,
fact,
because I was
The French,
I was
French,
watching it like a few months ago. It was on HBO, and I had a few cocktails in me, and I put it on for a few minutes late at night.
I wouldn't say it was a great movie, but it's definitely an interesting movie, and
Yeah.
the girl in it is really amazing, and
Right.
he's a great actor, and it was neat. It's a neat little
It's
film.
just so funny, yeah. That Pitt he, works with guys like Bertolucci, he works with Haneke, works with fucking Larry Clark. You know, I mean,
What was he in Clark's?
Bully.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
So,
I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah, it's
Jeez.
a really intense film. Most horror film remakes have been disastrous, if you really think about it. But some of them have been kind of successful with the horror crowds, like like Rob Zombie's Halloween, Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Does Evil Dead, or even Let Me In, does this remake of Evil Dead, does this have a chance to walk down the same road with some of these better remakes?
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably, with the exception of maybe Let Me In, it's certainly the best of the bunch you mentioned.
Hmm.
I hated Rob Zombie's Halloween. I wish it would go away and never see it again. It's fucking awful. It's the most god awful piece of shit I've ever seen.
Oh, Jesus.
I hated it, and I love. I got to tell you, I like Rob Zombie. I love House of a Thousand Corpses. I love The Devil's Rejects even more. I'm looking forward to The Lords of Salem, even though I've heard that's a piece of shit too.
That's amazing. I'm really curious how you could like House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects
and
and
then not
not.
like Halloween.
Yeah.
It's
Is it
really simple. So
okay?
here's what I hate about Halloween. To me, Michael Myers is a force of nature. Michael Myers is not an abused kid who had a troubled
Okay.
childhood, who if somebody just hugged him, he'd be all better.
He's the boogeyman.
I don't give a shit. I don't want to sympathize with fucking Michael Myers while he's knifing somebody. I don't want to be like, he's doing that because he feels really bad about his mommy. I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. Michael Myers is a terrifying force of nature.
Right.
What makes Michael Myers scary is that Dr. Loomis couldn't fix him.
Right.
There's no way Dr. Loomis, any kind of expertise that Dr. Loomis could have brought to bear to save Michael was fruitless because Michael was evil. And it wasn't anything that made Michael evil. Michael just was. And when you mess with that, it's over for me. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in him working out his childhood issues. So
not every antagonist needs a backstory, and sometimes in film it works better without a backstory. And I think that's why Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight works so well, is because he doesn't give the Joker a fucking backstory.
Yes. He's
You
just
understand?
there. He's just there.
Yeah, so like everything he does becomes more absolute. He does it, as opposed to doing it for a reason because he was fucking hit when he was a kid. It makes more sense.
Yeah,
You know.
I do understand that. And I do agree with you guys, but I think therein lies the problem with remakes because it's a constantly engaging on some level, on a nagging level with its original source, and
Yeah.
so when I go to see what's his face Rob Zombie's version of it, I don't care. I love the original Halloween. I really loved it when I was a kid. It scared the shit out of me. I still love it when I go and watch it again when we have to watch it or whatever for the show. But that said, when I went to go see Rob Zombie's movie, I didn't even think like I would like I go see a movie. I hope it's not engaging with another movie. You know what I'm saying? And I think and I know that that's problematic for so many reasons that extend outside the movie
Yeah,
itself,
Dave,
and
can you agree that the first 45 minutes of Halloween, if it's not associated with Halloween, if it's not Michael Myers, I mean, is that not really good filmmaking, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zombie is a talented filmmaker. I think he did a good job. Technically, I like how he he executed Halloween. I just didn't like what he did with it. I didn't like his take on Michael Myers, and it's not even that he didn't conform to the first movie or anything like that. I think it's just that he made it less effective. But by giving him more, he gave him less. You know what I mean? He made him a less effective character.
mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I mean that's me. I don't know.
But still, like that's what I'm saying. Like I could get on board with that, and even though I do like both versions of the film, I could get on board with that. But still the problem remains is that where the problem lies is that is that it's got to constantly engage with its source to
Yeah.
satisfy this one, satisfy that one, to do a little bit better, to change it up. Like you have to juggle all these things instead of going and making a film that comes out of your soul. You got to go and you got to
Yeah.
go and think about what the fans think. Like some of the fans are gonna get on you because you're not doing anything new. Some of them are gonna get on you because you're doing too many things new. You know what I mean? It's soul sucking business.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, this is what's really important. And why I think Evil Dead is successful in being a remake is that I completely agree. It has to make some concessions because you're right. It has to please those people to a certain extent.
It's got to say shaken, not stirred at some point in the film.
Right, absolutely.
You know?
But where I think the Evil Dead is effective is in that it's not completely beholden. It doesn't say I'm just going to completely give these people everything they want. Alvarez says I'm making my own movie, and he does. And it's a movie that definitely engages with the canon of the past films, but it blazes its own trail as well, and it doesn't get lost up its own ass like the way the Hobbit. Let's talk about the Hobbit for a second and the ultimate disaster
I haven't seen that one.
that is, because it's a fucking disaster. And to me, what happened to the Hobbit is that Peter Jackson had to put up with so many years of fat fucking nerds screaming about all the stupid things he left out of the fucking, Lord of the Rings trilogy. And they're all pissing their little panties about fucking Tom Bombadil and
Believe these
whatever
guys.
other bullshit, right? They just cried and cried and cried that their fucking favorite stupid thing wasn't in there, and so they're gonna fucking sit in their little beardo rooms and fucking play with their dolls. And he caved to these fuckers. He
Yeah.
caved to these fuckers, and he just decided, you know what? I'm throwing everything in there. I'm just gonna throw everything in. Fuck pacing. and fuck the fact that these are different films, and you know, fuck the fact that film and books are different mediums. I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna,
That's it, man.
you know what I
That's
mean?
it.
I'm just gonna try and dump everything in there, and the pace is all wrong, and everything's all fucked up, and all of a sudden, the whole thing is a fucking disaster, and you end up with The Hobbit, which has no sense of pacing, no granted, there's some really awesome stuff in there, but there's some really terrible shit in there too, and it's because he gave in, he surrendered to the dorks, and don't surrender to the dorks. You never surrender to the dorks. The dorks are wrong. Okay.
Well, that's it, man. You know, you don't make art by consensus, man. That's
Absolutely.
you make product by consensus, and that's what the heart. That's what's at the heart of
Well,
of
yeah,
this.
and The
You
Hobbit
know.
was made by a committee of fat beards, and there's no changing that. And
Yeah.
what you get is this sort of
Fat beards.
it's true. And so what you get is this sort of treacly bullshit, you know,
Right.
where they just can't get to the point, and they can't recognize that yes, you've got to cut here and cut there, and you know, you got to do something. Like I had when I was
But even, I mean, it's just even starts in conception, man. I mean, as soon as you're basing it on something, you need to throw it away and find the heart of that thing and build it from scratch. If you're gonna adapt a book or make a, God forbid, make a sequel or whatever, you need to like, if you really want to make a work of art that's worth looking at, if you want to make fucking cinema, you need to scrap everything and find out what is what for you is the essence of the work, and then build from scratch. And if you hit some of those notes along the way, great. If you don't, fuck it. You're making a film. You're not making an illustrated book, and this is ultimately the problem I have with adaptations and sequels in general.
well, ultimately, I think that's what Alvarez does or attempts to do with Evil Dead. And actually, it's interesting. I had practically this same conversation with Don Coscarelli last week. And we had literally probably almost the identical conversation where we talked about the challenges of adapting the book John Dies at the End into a film.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's impossible to please all the people out there who are fans of the book and who are bitching and crying and screaming that their favorite parts of the book aren't in there.
All right.
And he's also a dude that's made 3 sequels to his Phantasm movie.
Yeah, he's making a 5th, man.
So yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Well, it's funny when we were talking. I'm like, "Are you gonna do a Phantasm 5?" He's like, "I don't know, man. I'd like to. Would you guys put me on the cover?" And I'm like, "For sure." And he's like, "Then I'll do it."
Hey, Dave. I mean, you were talking to Coscarelli. I mean, that's interesting because Phantasm is. I mean, that's an entity into its own self. I mean, did he at all convey to you that there were ever talks of maybe someone else adapting Phantasm and rebooting it?
He's had a lot of interest in remaking Phantasm. He's been
absolutely.
And he's like, I've always resisted it because I don't like remakes.
Good for him. Because Phantasm, and I'm sure a lot of most of the people who are listening to this are either film fans or horror fans. I mean, Phantasm is one of the most underrated horror films.
It's amazing.
It is a beautiful. It beautifully combines horror and science fiction like I've never seen before. Almost as good as Alien. Honestly, it's that amazing. Joe, have you ever seen Phantasm?
No, I haven't. But I guess I'm gonna have to check it out.
Well, you know what? John Dies at the End is coming out on DVD in a couple weeks, and Pace has really been involved with it. So what we should do is kind of do a mini episode with Phantasm and John Dies at the End, Joe.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, especially since you have not seen Phantasm.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Well, and both films are spectacular.
Yeah.
You will not escape the horror.
It's coming back, Joe. The horror.
We can't get away.
It's so funny how all roads led back to Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson. By the way,
It's true. We ended up talking about The Hobbit. Holy shit.
That's right.
It's
And and the third one, Tom, as if we were the two careers of those guys who have each made like I don't know, umpteen films or something like that in their careers so far. We did both of their careers on the same show, and you were also wanted to do John Carpenter.
no, no, don't
I
say
thought that was
Initially, it was going to be Sam Raimi and John Carpenter.
okay.
And what happened was somebody else when
on the Horror Palace
did John Carpenter, did 6 John Carpenter movies or something.
Well, somebody was doing that every other week on the Horror
So
Palace.
we caught wind of that immediately. So we yanked Carpenter, and then I wound up picking Peter Jackson, and which was really, wound up being a really great move because to put those two side by side.
Yeah, it really worked. It did really work, which
that really working brilliantly because they started off because I remember they both started off in horror and they did their horror thing, and then they wound up directing 3 important blockbuster trilogies, one being The Lord of the Rings, and Raimi did Spider-Man. So it really wound up working well.
And they're both crowd pleasers. Right? Like they're both crowd pleasing directors.
Yes, and they're both directors who are just really faithful and really interested in the spectacle of cinema.
Yeah.
Like just really taking a look at what cinema is doing, like the eye orgasm or whatever, you know what I mean? Just really looking at the gore and just really love how cinema can show you what's on stage as opposed to being plot driven or story driven or even character driven. At least earlier in their careers.
Right. And Raimi just got done doing Oz the Great and Powerful, by the way, which is out in theaters right now.
Right.
Sucks.
That's right. That's what I hear. All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up on this mini episode. I want to thank both Joseph Christiana and you, Dave Pace, for giving us an advanced review of Evil Dead, dude. Thank you very much.
Hey, my pleasure, man.
I would like to remind everyone that they can like us on Facebook at the Cutting Room fan page, and you can also follow me, Thomas Detloff, on Twitter at Cutting Room Show. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is produced by Joseph Christiana and Thomas Detloff, and this episode is edited once again by our good friend Joe Christiana. We'll see you guys soon. We're over and we're out. Ciao.